We could talk about our $1 million grand prizes, or our massive best ball tournaments, or the hundreds of millions in prizes we paid out in our history. We could talk about how we've never had a Dynasty League fold, or the unique contests that we offer. But instead, we'll just say this. At the FFPC, we make millionaires.
Welcome in. It's Sunday night, which means me and Dave Tripoli, my co-host, are yet again covering a live FFPC Main Event draft. $1 million grand prizes on the line, $5.91 million in the prize pool, $2,000 entry. These are the Sharks, the best of the best playing the FFPC Main Event Terp. But our job tonight is to overreact to some preseason highlights, some preseason snap counts, all of that. So Terp, first round is already underway. We'll cover that. We'll jump back into that. But my first question I want to lead off with is, what is one thing from about the first week of preseason games that you're actually buying? Because you were telling me pre-show, it's like you don't really buy into week one of the preseason too much. But one thing that you said, this is real and I'm monitoring.
The uncertainty of the Philadelphia Eagles running back position is number one on my list right now. Obviously, Swift played, Penny played, Trey Sermon's really irrelevant, but getting Gainwell sat, Boston Scott sat. Boston Scott, just a veteran, so I don't expect much out of that. But Gainwell, is he the running back one? I mean, the reports came out from a couple beat writers this week saying that Gainwell is the lead back in Philly. I have my doubts there. I still think that Swift is still the best back and the most talented. But Gainwell has the familiar. I can't even say the word. He's familiar with the offense, and I expect him to, be a part of the offense. I expect him to be the running back too, because if anything, we were talking about pre-show, I could see a path that Penny gets cut. I know a lot of people thought he was going to be the starter, but first preseason game didn't look great. I mean, he did okay, but he didn't look like he had that burst that I saw in the last couple of years when he was in Seattle and in the short periods he played before getting hurt. So the Eagles running back position, obviously you still have the Jalen Hurts issue with the short touchdowns, and obviously he's going to get a ton of work rushing the ball. So it's definitely a worry, but that's definitely something I'm buying as of now.
Someone in the chat said Trey Lance still sucks. That's my main takeaway. Looked awful today.
Looked awful. Wasn't great. Offensive line didn't help him. I mean, I watched the first two sacks and the first two drives. I'm a Trey Lance guy. Let me get that out of the way. The first two sacks, he could have thrown two picks. By the time he put the ball down, there's guys in his face. So, was it Trey Lance's fault? Possibly, but offensive line didn't do him any justice either.
Jumping back, though, to the Eagles, it's a weird situation because I was saying this is the volatility of drafts, especially at this time of year. It's about a week and a half ago, there was a lot of bubbling reports. Hey, Rashad Penny might be one of the better values in draft. Like, this guy could legitimately be the starter. And then all of a sudden the reports are the starters are all out their week one game, and Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott are the two. Rashad Penny, people looked into it, made contract, could have some outs, could be a cut candidate. Rashad Penny, I think, is the big loser from that weekend. Swift looked really good, broke off that big 22-yard run. He's just too talented to not have a role. I could see it being a situation in which maybe Gainwell starts off as a starter on paper, kind of seeds touches as the year goes on. But I think Rashad Penny, I would be scared to click that draft button. Not as worried about Swift, but I think Gainwell, you're going to see a bump in the next week just with the positive press that he's probably getting.
The thing with Rashad Penny is you're definitely scared to hit that button right now for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that definitely comes with a lot of uncertainty. But if Rashad Penny finds a way to get cut and doesn't make this team, it's not always the worst case scenario because he's definitely a talented enough back to be picked up. And there's a lot of spots where a Rashad Penny could still be a solid fantasy player. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to be a league winner, but it's possible. So if you're drafting Rashad Penny, you're obviously drafting him because he's behind the best offensive line in football, and you think he's going to be the guy. But if for whatever reason he doesn't make this team, he'll be picked up very quickly. And, it's not a end-all, be-all spot. I think there's still potential with the player.
Henry Muto in the chat, little dynasty in his 2021 rookie draft that he had. Traded the 115 and 211 in his rookie draft for Trey Lance. Justin Fields goes at the 115. Amon-Ra St. Brown goes at the 211. And he was saying that he would have taken both of them if he had just kept those picks.
Ouch.
I respect you putting that out, Henry, into the world. And
that's stuff that gives you nightmares at night.
Nightmares. Terp, no real surprises so far. I wanted to ask you, just because I've been seeing, speaking of the devil, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he goes at the 109 today. He's been going in the main event over the last week at the 111. We talk every other show. I feel like we're talking about how high is Jahmyr Gibbs going to go. You don't talk about, can Amon-Ra St. Brown hit top 5 pick, especially if he goes off on that Thursday night? Because his stock has it's slowly risen throughout the summer, and it feels like it's still percolating as more and more training camp clips get leaked, the positive press, all those. I mean, and all the analytics, right? Jamal Williams has vacated 17 touchdowns, I believe it is. Amon-Ra St. Brown got tackled at the 1 yard line so many times last year. Basically, it's how high can Amon-Ra St. Brown go, and where do you think his ADP settles in the main event?
I can easily see him and Travis Kelce being 1 and 2 in any order if everything goes, ape shit in the Thursday night game for us Friday drafters, Saturday drafters, guys who are drafting after the game. I can see him getting in the top 6, 7. I don't think he'll get in the top 5 range. I don't think he gets past Jefferson, Kelce, Chase, McCaffrey, Tyreek, maybe Cooper Kupp, just because of a little bit of uncertainty with the injury. I could see him moving up. I mean, he's been moving, and obviously he's in the first, end of first round, early second round. He's not going to. There's only so much he can move. He's not getting up there in the Chase Jefferson range. He's just not. Whether he should be up there is a different story, but he's just not going to get up there. But he's moving. He was early. I got him in a couple drafts, in a couple best ball drafts early, right around the 16, 17, pick in the second round. Thrilled about that. Now you ain't getting him anywhere close to there. If you're lucky, if he makes it to the turn at this point, which I had a best ball draft early, today, and it was Bijan Robinson or St. Brown. And the only reason I didn't take St. Brown is because I have a ton of St. Brown. So it was a little bit more of just ownership, but it's hard to pass on him right now. I'm taking him over Diggs. I'm taking him over Lamb. I'm taking him over Brown. I'm taking him over Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, even though I love Garrett Wilson. It's Jalen Waddle. That's a deep fall for him.
Henry Muto in the chat's talking about he who shall not be named and how he went number 1 in 2020. I think me and Turp said we'll be covering some of those Vegas live drafts, the live boards, live from Planet Hollywood in just about a month, just under a month. Crazy. So we'll have those that Friday draft for sure. So we can really see how the Thursday night game impacts ADP. Jonathan Taylor at the 301, kind of been excited to talk about him. Reports come out today. Shane Steichen says he'll be back at training. He's back with the team. You said this is expected. I think you've been pretty vocal about it, as many have, is that the holdout is not going to work. The market's just not there. Seems like signs are he's going to play. Obviously, missed out on the dip if you haven't already. You're still probably getting one, but we were looking at late third round in some instances with Jonathan Taylor. He goes at the 301 today. Where are you comfortable drafting him still? Because there is still some uncertainty, don't get me wrong, but it looks as though it's trending in a positive direction.
I'm comfortable drafting him pretty much where he's going right this second. The turn is right where I'm comfortable drafting. There's plenty of guys that I would draft over him right now. Not really the highest on him before all this happened, and it still won't be the highest when he comes back. I don't like the situation, for him. I do like Richardson, but there's going to be some growing pains in that offense. And I have a feeling, defenses are going to shut him down and make Richardson beat him, whether that's with his legs or, obviously with the uncertainty with his arm. So there's definitely a worry there. I'm not the biggest Taylor guy, so I'll probably pass on him in a lot of spots, but I would take him over the Higgins and Josh Jacobs of the world pretty comfortably.
Yeah, you mentioned, I just want to go back. You mentioned Jalen Waddle in the fall. The latest he's been in the last week in the FFPC main event was the 209. He goes at the 212 today. And I just got to say, team one obviously starts out with Justin Jefferson, gets Waddle at a very late value. And then Jonathan Taylor kind of still buying that dip. So a team with a lot of potential there in team one. Terp, I wanted to kind of bring your attention. Team 3 here, Ja'Marr Chase, Chris Olave, Jalen Hurts, really good start. I know you're not a proponent of it per se, but in these season-long managed leagues, right? Your team 3 here on the clock. You see team 5 right there has Devonta Smith. Do you think sometimes just if you're in the market and you're interested, I might lean quarterback, are you further inclined to maybe take Hurts there knowing that that Devonta Smith team is just 2 picks behind you and kind of playing a little bit of keep away?
In these drafts, I mean, you can't.
It's a good pick regardless. I do think
it's a good pick regardless. If if you're spending $2,000 or whatever your entry fee is, this high up in high stakes fantasy football, and you're looking at other teams and going, I want to steal Jalen Hurts because he has Devonta Smith. That's just a flawed system. You're drafting the best team to win this league. Obviously, you want to win $1 million too, but with the FFPC, like if you come in the top 2 of this league, you get money. If you make it to the playoffs and you come and you win the playoffs, you get money. If you come in second, you get money. So that's your goal. Obviously, your goal is to win $1 million, but you're trying to draft the best team possible to get that first. So to me, it's a flawed thing. I don't look at other guys. I'll look at like this guy could draft Jalen Hurts, and I don't want Jalen Hurts, so maybe this is a guy that he'll steal that I'm not looking at.
Mm-hmm.
But I will never take a player just to take him off somebody else's team to try to like bust his stack or make his team worse. That just doesn't make any sense. I'm drafting the best guys that I want for my team, whatever positions possible.
Yeah, and by no means are we can't get in these drafters' head, right? No idea if that's what they were planning on doing. And in all respect, that this early with a Hurts to Josh Allen, as people in the comments are saying that Allen goes right before Diggs, it's good picks regardless, right? These are top tier quarterbacks who have been proven difference makers. Turp, I want to bring your attention. Breece Hall at the 308. We've kind of been back and forth on him. I don't think we've touched base on him in a while. He's been going at the 312, but you've seen the fall. Crazy as I think we said last week is the Javonte Williams and all that positive buzz. I think we were kind of anticipating with Breece, but kind of the longer that we go without the Jets signing Dalvin Cook, the longer we go without them exploring other free agent running back options. Although Israel Abanikanda did look good in the preseason.
Very good.
Very good. And Michael Carter actually put up a good stat line too. But do we see Breece Hall's ADP slowly start to rise the longer they go without signing maybe one of those bigger name free agents out there? Or do you think he stabilizes in this late third?
I think he stabilizes. I mean, there's still so much uncertainty. Having him not at practice yet, not back there on the field. I mean, it's still a worry. We got less than a month, like you said, till the season starts. And obviously, we know he's going to start off slow. We know he's not going to be out there right away. He's going to get some carries. I would think week 1 carries, but there's still so much questions regarding, is he back? Is he going to be back? They don't really have anybody behind him, like you said. So is there a worry that a veteran's going to come in? I think if Dalvin Cook, didn't have crazy money requirements, he would have been there by now. So I haven't heard anybody else they're looking at. So I think they're probably happy with Michael Carter, and the rookie. So will Breece stabilize? He should go right where, he's going. The talent-wise, like I said, if he was healthy, he'd be a first-round pick. But it's just it's a big question in a draft with a lot of money. I mean, you only have a short regular season. It's not like you have 15, 16 games to dance around. So if Breece Hall's not ready by week 5 or 6, you better figure it out quickly because by the time he's back, he might be dead.
So I just want to say, you're in a good draft room. I'm kind of looking at all these teams, and for the most part, some really impressive starts. I'm looking at Team 11, Bijan, Pollard, Lamar. Love that start. Kind of obviously the first 2 rounds is one of my top guys. A lot of people in Bijan, your guy that you've been hyping up for years, Tony Pollard, then turns around with Lamar Jackson. And this Team 1 we kind of talked about, but so some really interesting starts to this draft. Excited to see where this draft room goes. Joe Mixon got banged up today. He goes at the 312. Jahmyr Gibbs at the 403. I'm going to go check the ADP because that just
I don't understand it. We talked about this. Balky talked about this. You talked about this. We thought Gibbs was going to move the other way.
Yep.
And it seems like he's going like I saw a couple 4th round Jahmyr Gibbs, and I don't get it.
It's the latest he's gone. In the FFPC Main Event.
You're going to sit here and somebody's going to tell me they're at draft Joe Mixon over Jahmyr Gibbs? And no. I know the situation's great in Cincinnati, but
yeah.
I mean, what is
we were going to talk about Mixon. We're switching to Jahmyr Gibbs. He goes at the 306. I thought it would be higher than this by the point if I was projecting. It hasn't been. 306 is still a little lower, but okay, mid-third. 403 is a phenomenal value for team number 10 right there. That's crazy. What do you think it is? Is it Montgomery concerns? Like I don't know. Just maybe we're too.
He's a
too
small
invested.
back. I mean, that's his size. He's going to be banged up. That's fair, I guess. But I mean, you saw the coach literally do a backflip and literally was hugging, kissing everybody when they drafted the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Injury is the only thing that's fear of Jahmyr Gibbs right now. And I still think David Montgomery's an outstanding fantasy football pick. He is way better than Jamal Williams and should get all the work that Jamal Williams got, plus more. And if God forbid something happens to Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery's in a gold mine. But Jahmyr Gibbs has that monster big playability that you don't find that much of the running back position anymore. So to me, you're getting him in a 4th round. That team 10's, great so far.
Yeah, some comments in the chat. Just they're making good points, right? I see the flip side. Just David Montgomery goal line is still a problem. Barney Newkirk, he's saying that touchdowns is a little bit concerned and gives his opportunity. I just think that offense, as Terp, I know you do, is just going to be explosive. It can sustain multiple backs, and Gibbs was one of the most explosive players in the entire NFL draft this year. And they capitally invested in him. It was 12th overall. They were going to take him before Bijan at 6. I think they're going to utilize him in all sorts of ways. Really, that's shocking to me. In the moment, I don't think I was even processing that he was falling, but 403 is. I can't tell you the last time I saw Jahmyr. I can't tell you the last time I saw Jahmyr in the 4th round in any format. Like genuinely, like the last time we did one of these where he was in the 4th round.
Best ball. I mean, I guess he's going to have plenty of spike weeks, and there could be some inconsistencies in his game, and that would be a little harder to overcome in a managed league. But I don't know, man. There's no chance that I'm passing on. I'm like, hey, Jahmyr Gibbs versus Breece Hall. I like Breece Hall, talented kid, but coming off a major injury. And I know Jahmyr Gibbs is a rookie, and he has a lot of questions of his size and all that stuff. But come on, man, you just can't in a short regular season league that realistically you could be drawn dead by the time Breece Hall's back. It's a questionable pick.
Terp, I wanted to bring your attention to, actually, it wasn't bring your attention to anything. It was a question. My mind's all over the place there. My question is, obviously you said preseason, you don't put a ton of weight into the first week you let to see. I asked you kind of what storyline, what player maybe caught you right. Did any teams impress you? And I know it's hard to buy in it too much, but it might be the Broncos, Steelers. There were some teams that did look good, efficient offenses with the starters. What team out there were you kind of like, all right, I'll buy a little of that team after seeing their week 1 preseason performance?
I like the Steelers going into the season, and I'm glad you mentioned that. George Pickens is a guy that has been pretty much crapped on all off season. He can't run routes. He is one trick pony. You obviously see the big plays that he's making in camp, the big catches and all that stuff, but you never saw the route running ability. It's always Deontay Johnson this, Deontay Johnson that. George Pickens has impressed me so far, and will I see a spike tonight in his draft position? Probably not, because people are still the doubters are still there, and it's still a massive risk obviously in that offense, because you need Kenny Pickett to take that next level step. I mean, they have plenty of guys there: Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, Harris, George Pickens. I mean, some talented offense all around. Still have the questions with the offensive coordinator. Jalen Warren's not going anywhere. But it all comes down to Kenny Pickett. So the Steelers is definitely a team that I think has impressed me through week 1. I don't really take that much stock, but watching them and actually looking over, trying to see are they changing up what they usually do. I like what they're doing. I think that they could be a surprise in that division. That division is, in my opinion, the hardest in football.
For sure. Terp, I mean, 2 soapbox items for you. The floor is yours. And one item is DJ Moore, goes at the 410. He's been going at the 504. I know you love the player. You think he could be due for a big year, but I know you wanted to talk about kind of this idea of preseason essentially highlights and actually kind of analyzing the plays, boosting drafts. This drafter wasn't too crazy, but you see some spikes when it's like, actually go look at what actually happened here. So I want you to discuss that. And I want you to discuss Travis Etienne going at the 411 and kind of the concern with Tank Bigsby and why you're not worried.
DJ Moore is a guy that when he first went to the Bears, I really thought would get pushed up in drafts. I mean, obviously people think Justin Fields can't pass. And that's fair because he didn't do it last year. They were bottom 5 in the league. I think they were last in the league actually in passing attempts. But you got to look past that stuff. They went out and got a number 1 receiver, made a deal that nobody thought was even out there, and made Justin Fields 100 times better overnight. Can Justin Fields make the throws? Can he do? That's a big question because you saw the game-breaking rushing ability last year. I like DJ Moore. He's one of my highest owned players. I slowed down a little bit because I got caught up in the noise, but I'm not slowing up the rest of it. He is going to be a guy that I'm targeting all over the place. I mean, I just feel like he's going to get peppered with targets. There's so many questions. Is Mooney healthy? Chase Claypool, does he actually want to play football? The rest of the team is very suspect. DJ Moore should be a target hog. If Fields takes that next step, you're going to be laughing at yourself for not taking too much of DJ Moore.
So what you're saying is just essentially you're taking DJ Moore and bumping it up, regardless of that poor screen pass that Justin Fields did that DJ Moore broke. You're saying that shouldn't have affected his ADP as much as it did. It should just be the belief that maybe Justin Fields will improve, that offense will improve, and DJ Moore is a game-breaking player.
100%.
All right, so then next topic. Travis Etienne goes at the 411. A ton of Tank Bigsby love on the Twitter timeline. I'm sure you were loving that as the number one Travis Etienne fan club leader. Yeah, soapbox. It's soapbox time. Your time is now. Why are you not worried about Tank Bigsby? I saw you tweet that the Tank Bigsby love has gone too far.
I mean, Travis Etienne is going to be all over in drafts. I'm in a best ball draft right now. He went first pick in the third round. Do I think that's where he should go? No, I don't. Let's be fair about it. I'm a GOAT Etienne guy. I'll stay with Travis Etienne to the depths of hell. That's how much I like the guy. But I saw him also go in the 5th, 6th round of a main tonight. That's craziness. Like, where he should be going is exactly right around where he went tonight. Is there questions with Tank Bigsby? Of course there's questions. But Tank Bigsby is a rookie. You have no idea. Can he pass block? You see all the flashy runs and all that stuff in the preseason. That's cool and all. We've seen that in preseason pass. I'd rather a guy like Etienne, who's familiar with Trevor Lawrence, and at the end of the day, this team runs through Trevor Lawrence. If Trevor Lawrence wants Travis Etienne out there, guess who's going to be out there? Travis Etienne. He's his guy from Clemson, extremely talented. Disappointed a lot last year with his pass catching ability. Wasn't great. Goal line accuracy, not great either. But that's a rookie running back. Let's see when he develops a little bit more, in that offense, which should be one of the best offenses in football. I'm still on the Etienne train. I'm not getting off it. He's a guy that I need to get more exposure to because now he's getting dipped because everybody's talking about Tank Bigsby this and Tank Bigsby that. And could Tank Bigsby be the James Robinson annoyance like early last year? It could be. But at the end of the day, I trust talent. And Travis Etienne is an extremely talented player in an offense that seems perfect for his abilities. So, Tank Bigsby, you can take him as high as you want. Let Travis Etienne fall to me, please.
A couple of quick comments. People are talking to him. We'll pivot to that and I'll go back. Kyle Pitts goes at the 511. A couple of surprise comments. He's going at the 501. I just want to ask you, obviously, you're the resident Eagles fan. You're on the clock, Dallas Goedert or Kyle Pitts. Who are you taking? Obviously, there's concerns with Arthur Smith we've discussed. But again, you would assume the ceiling still for Pitts is way higher than what Goedert possesses.
I mean, I think it is. But with Goedert, I mean, it's just another year in that offense, another year with Jalen Hurts, another year where it's pretty much a real tight target tree. It's A.J. Brown, it's Devonta Smith, and it's Dallas Goedert. Obviously, you have the running backs too, but there's no third receiver to worry about. There's no backup tight end that's pushing him. He's going to get plenty of targets. If he stays healthy, I mean, do I think he's a league-winning tight end? He could be if there's an injury, but I don't want no injuries. So, I don't want that to happen. But he's still a solid. There's about 90% chance he's going to be a top tight end this year. Mm-hmm. He might be on the edge of the top end, but where you're drafting him most of the time with Hurts or, as your number one tight end. He's safe. Is he a league winner without, injury? I don't think so. Is he a Darren Waller type? I don't think so. But he's as safe as you're going to get out of all the tight ends that are outside of Kelsey and Mark Andrews. I feel like he's going to get you 15 with the potential to 20, but a very, very small of 10. It's a good floor. It makes sense. I like him. Kyle Pitts, I just can't draft him. Not healthy yet. Desmond Ridder, Arthur Smith. We've talked about this 100 times. Love the talent. Love them coming out of school. But I don't know. I just can't I don't trust that offense until I see it. If they beat me, like I said with Kadarius Toney, if Arthur Smith beats me this year, I can live with myself. And Kyle Pitts is going to be one of those guys where if he falls to the right spot, which he's never going to because somebody's always going to love him more, I'll take him. But I just don't see many Kyle Pitts teams on my team.
You have a couple people in the comments agreeing with Etienne. Another good point made is just also, as we've said for kind of a lot of their position players, Calvin Ridley's addition can only help. Turp, I want to go back to one of the comments. They said, I'm assuming it was kind of back with one of our discussions about preseason takeaways. And they said Christian Watson is going to get targets for days. And Christian Watson was your guy early on in these shows when we were doing these shows late May, June. You haven't talked about him in a while. He goes at the 503. The latest he's gone is the 505 in the main event over the last week. He usually goes at the 408. So a good value here for Team 3. I know you're still on Christian Watson. And preseason, I think, can only enhance that love, right? Like
I'm not talking about Christian Watson for a reason because I talked about him for so much early.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting in the main event season. I don't want people thinking. I want people to think like the Christian Watson love slowing down a little bit. You give me Christian Watson, like Team 3 here. I'll just go target them right now. You give me that start in the main event. I'm running up and down the Vegas Strip doing backflips. I mean, just love the first 5 picks. Obviously, you got to hit running back, you got to hit tight end and all that stuff. But just those, I'm just player takes. Forget everything else. You really can't get a better start than that first 5 picks. A lot of things need to go your way.
Yeah.
But Christian Watson, nothing's changed. Nothing will change. Number 1 owned player, right? Him and Antonio Gibson. I don't see that. I don't see that changing unless some crazy value falls. But I mean, all aboard the Christian Watson train. That's never going to change. But this is probably the last thing I'm ever going to say about it because my mains are starting soon, and I don't want anybody to know who I am. It's not like best ball. We ain't doing any Dave Tripoli main event streams this year. We're just going to stick to the best ball and the fantasy pros, streets, and we're going to keep the main events quiet.
No main event live streams with Terp drafting it. Those will be done privately.
If I do, it'll be in costume and it'll be a different name up here.
Terp, they do go with Dameon Pierce. They get their first running back just solid pick, but they have to have been a little bit of running back run in this 6 round, which I want to talk about.
That's the problem is like best ball, you don't even worry about it. It's not even a question. But in the main, you get caught in a run like this, like, oh yeah, you got your 4 receivers, you got your stud quarterback, but like now you're two positions behind and you're just chasing a little bit. And it's like, do you really love Dameon Pierce or do you have to draft Dameon Pierce? Yeah. That's
and it hurts too because the guy I want to talk about is James Cook goes at the 602. The Javonte pushes well here. Both of them have been going in the late 6. They both kind of get bumped up. You see Rachaad White, despite kind of the injury concern, seems a little minor, which is a positive after it was reported to be kind of in the moment, it was a non-contact. He kind of crumpled. James Cook, Javonte Williams, Rachaad White, Dameon Pierce. I know you're not as much on Kamara, but basically out of the 6 running backs, 6 running backs taken the 6th round, who do you like the most?
It's a tough question because I really don't love any of them outside. Like if I had to rank, James Cook would be my guy. But he's getting steamed up so much in drafts right now.
Is he going to hit a point where it's a little bit too much?
It's getting close to it. Like, I mean, is he going to get to? I saw a 5th round main, James Cook today, first pick of the 5th round. And hey, go get your guy. If you think James Cook's going to be the guy, scores in the preseason, that has to excite you. If you're a James Cook guy, which I have a ton of James Cook, but he's going to get to a point where, like, I always look at it like main started a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see a lot of teams that have James Cook 8th round shares, 7th round shares, maybe even some 9th round shares. I doubt it, but without having the numbers in front of me.
The latest James Cook has gone in the last week. I think Maine's opened the live drafts at least about 10 days ago.
Right.
And the latest Cook has gone in I only have the last 7 days, is a 707. So you're looking at late 7th. So it's not
you're looking at a full round jump just in a week.
But some of those slows, you're looking at 8th, 9th.
Early on, the ones that just started right after the jump. I mean, you look at some of these guys who are getting moved up and steamed up. It's like, when are they going to get too expensive to where it's like, all right, I got to pivot to somebody else because, you don't really worry about who you're competing. Like I said, you got to win your 12-team league. You got to figure out a way to get to the $1 million dream before. But James Cook's getting steamed up. By the time we get to Vegas, he might be a 5th-round pick. And we've seen it before in the past.
Yep.
So it's definitely a worry. But if I had a rank, it would be James Cook, Rachaad White, Dameon Pierce. Rachaad White's a guy that I really haven't been on that much, but talking to a lot of people that are on him, a lot of their points make a lot of sense. I still have worries about the offense. I still have worries about the offensive line. But, his efficiency running the ball worries me. I don't think his backups are that awful. I still think there'll be enough work to be a pain in the butt to him. But they make a lot of good points. I mean, he's still going to catch a ton of passes. And if the offensive line improves just a little bit, White should be a very, very solid 6th-round pick. So I don't really have Javonte Williams. Nothing's changed. If he beats me, he beats me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can never take him in the 6th round when I wasn't taking him in the 9th, 10th round. It's I'll see it. And if what I hope is he has a big preseason run and everybody goes crazy and bumps him up even more. Could it burn me? Of course. But Dalvin Cook, same thing. Nothing. He still not signed yet. He's clearly arrogant about what he thinks he deserves. Everybody keeps talking about Miami, but please stay away from Miami. Yeah, that's pretty much where I stand. It's James Cook.
Let's throw another name into the mix. He goes around later than ADP. Cam Akers at the 706. Where would he slot in if, let's say, he goes at ADP like this is 5? But among those same guys I just asked you about, where's Cam Akers getting drafted by you?
We could say Cam Akers. We could also say J.K. Dobbins. Both of those two, I would take over everybody in the 6th round. Every single player, including James Cook.
J.K. Dobbins been going at the 701. The latest is 710. Cam Akers been going at the 605. The latest is the 705. So
the J.K. Dobbins discount will be closed very soon. He's going
back,
to get moved
right?
up draft boards because he's going to sign. There's no questions about it. Once Jonathan Taylor gets back in, the rest of these guys are just going to keep flooding behind him. They have no leverage. Maybe they sign some sort of guaranteed contract. Like I heard rumors of Dobbins signing. It's going to give him a little bit more money than he thought he was going to get. But these guys ain't getting big deals. It is what it is. Get your butt back in camp. We need you in fantasy drafts.
Some good comments in the chat. Kind of who didn't even play, and I boosted a little bit. It was the reason you and me did not like him coming out of the draft, coming into the NFL draft, right? It was the main reason because it's a serious issue. Then he had some good training camp reports, but then comes into the first preseason game. Quentin Johnson had 3 drops, a couple of bad ones. Mike Williams, I think you might see a little bit of a bump if Johnson continues to kind of struggle with the drops because it's going to play him off the field. I mean, we saw it at TCU. It's not as though this is something new. Like the Jahmyr, I remember someone saying, well, Jahmyr Chase had it. Yeah, but Jahmyr Chase was a beast in college and didn't struggle with drops. And then comes in his obviously rookie preseason, struggles with it, but then obviously no issue in the NFL. Quentin Johnson, this has been a trend. You had kind of said situation kind of made you buy into Quentin Johnson despite not liking the player out of college. I know it's just one preseason game, but the beat reporters have been writing like, yep, he's had some really crazy moments in training camp, but the drops are still there, and the drops really reared their head in his preseason debut. So where does that leave you on Mike Williams, and where does that leave you on Quentin Johnson?
What you're saying is correct about Mike Williams. I think he will start getting a bump up, but I don't think he's going to get as much of a bump as he probably should. I mean,
okay,
he is widely inconsistent. He doesn't, health is a big question. But that offense is going to be so much better this year. And with Kellen Moore, they're going to take more deep shots. And Mike Williams is the guy when it comes to deep shots. Back to Quentin Johnson, though. I talked about him coming out of the draft extensively, how I didn't like him.
Mm-hmm.
The TCU curse, the Jalen Reagor curse, drops were an issue. But I bought into the system, the Kellen Moore system, and I still will there be growing pains? Of course there will. But I see enough so far that's not making me, regret my decision to go. I've taken him on these streams, a couple times, not over. Like I'm saying, he's not somebody I want to be over crazy on. But if I'm getting Justin Herbert, he's going to be one of the guys that I add to a stack because the ability, he's a talented kid. He just has, some issues that are just, to me, glaring. But the ability's still there, and the coaches love him. Coaches drafted him. They could have drafted Jordan Addison like every single person said to do, but they chose Quentin Johnson. So I expect him to get him the ball a ton. If he makes, if he can just figure out how to catch the ball, fantasy owners are gonna regret not taking him where he's going.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see a little bit of a bump by him. You know who else? The bump is already here. Jahan Dotson, I think, is going to be, when we talk about kind of big movers in the final months of the season, I think Jahan Dotson is going to be one of them. Route running looks on point, had a great touchdown catch. Training camp reports have been glowing. I think there's going to be some belief with Bieniemy and that offense that we've kind of already seen. We talked about it really early on in the process. That's why we both kind of were in on Antonio Gibson. And as we said, Terry McLaurin's number one. Jahan Dotson is seeing number twos. He's not getting the top matchup.
I think by the time the season's ending, Jahan Dotson will be past the number one receiver on the Commanders. I was going to say the Washington Redskins, but I don't want to get canceled.
They're going to change the name again. They're going to do
it's change it back to the Redskins.
I mean, I know you're a Philly guy, and Philly fans hate the Sixers owner Josh Harris, but I think from a neutral outsider, I think he's done a good job making them think it's his winner. He's going to do a good job in Washington because he's a true fan, and I think that's.
I'm a Sam Howell guy. We talked about it. I think Sam Howell will make them serviceable this year. You look disgusted.
Me?
Yeah, Sam Howell. No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I see it like other people do, but I think that Dotson. I'm getting more concerned about Terry because my point is if I'm on Dotson, which I'm slowly starting to join that movement of the Jahan Dotson, I just wonder how many players on that offense, which I don't predict to be good, are actually going to be returning value on their ADP, which is kind of why maybe Dotson, I think in the 7th. Early 8th is fine. You might start seeing that get bumped up, but basically I'm going to turn this into, I don't know if I can do Terry McLaurin in the 5th round. I think there's just too much uncertainty there.
I'll pass on him. I mean, if he's another guy, if he beats me, he beats me. I'll have some shares, and in best ball, obviously, just you spread out a little bit of ownership because he's a talented player. But I'll take my chances with Dotson 2-3 rounds later.
It's just, I don't know. People are saying in the chat, I'm reading that, which is why I'm pausing, that I see it with Sam Howell. I mean, it was one game. He was a 5th round pick for a reason. That last year in North Carolina was rough. It's just.
I just want him to play good in the preseason for one simple reason. I'm tired of hearing about Jacoby Brissett. I have a lot of super flex, Sam Howell.
Mm-hmm.
Good with that. I'm biased toward myself, and that's where I care about. Obviously, Sam Howell's cheap in drafts. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to be a starting fantasy quarterback. I think he's going to be serviceable enough to where they're going to win some games. They're going to be in games. But, am I saying he's going to be the next, Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence? No. But he has some potential.
It goes back to, though, we talked about, I think, on the last show. If the Commanders are smart, even if Howell stinks, that's fine. Let him stink. It's tank then. Go get Caleb Williams.
It will be very interesting to see when teams start going into full tank mode.
Yeah, Jacoby Brissett really shouldn't be playing either way because either they have something with Howell.
Exactly.
The worst thing is Howell is just incredibly middling, but not bad enough to get them the first overall pick, but not good enough to actually be like, oh, maybe he has potential, which I think that's where he might end up.
If you're fantasy-wise, I don't know what start off 0-6, what the heck do you track Kyler Murray out there for?
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
If you had to set the over-under right now, and I didn't think in the 8th round we'd be discussing this, but might as well because we're here. If you had to set, and I'll ask the chat this too, if you're setting the over-under on games that Clayton Tune starts this year for the Cardinals, what do you think it would be?
Wow.
Because I'm only asking because talk about a random guy who's gotten great training camp reports. Is it kind of out of nowhere? He's been good ones. And
I wouldn't be surprised if he starts week 1. I mean, Cole McCoy's probably going to be the starter, but
why not? Just see what you got.
You see what you got. I'm going to say he starts.
I think he gets a couple. I would say probably 2.5
starts.
That's high, but I don't know. I don't know because Kyler is going to want to come back, and I think
this team is the one team that, if you look at all these teams in the league, that one team, I don't think people say the Rams could be tanking for Kalen Williams. I don't see that because I don't see Sean McVay just totally mailing it in. Mm-hmm. They would have to be 1-8 for him to just maybe trade deadline, maybe move Cooper Kupp, and if that's possible money wise and all that cool stuff, but. Are they going to ever get in that full? Sean McVay doesn't want to be part of a rebuild. I mean, he still thinks they could be good with Stafford, Kupp, and etc. Does the rest of the world think that? No. But with the Cardinals, I mean, they have not a lot of talent on the team. Not a lot of skill position talent. I mean, James Conner's good. Marquise Brown's good. Trey McBride's, potential. But they don't really have a ton of guys who you're really excited to draft in fantasy this year. So if they start off 0-6 or 0-7, what the heck would you bring back Kyler Murray for? Not that Kyler Murray is somebody's I'm betting on the win games, but
I mean, yeah, last year I don't think Kyler Murray helped them too much, but I see what you're saying.
You get rid of you go in there and you go in full tank mode. You get your quarterback. You trade Kyler Murray for you'll get plenty for him. I'm not saying you'll get a ton, but you'll get a good amount. The contract's obviously a little worry, but it makes too much sense. And they're, to me, that if I were to bet on a team that's number one pick worthy this year, the Cardinals got to be leading your pack by a landslide, because that's what everybody's going to be targeting if they start off slow.
Terp, I don't want to sound as though I'm just regurgitating fantasy Twitter and I'm a mouthpiece for fantasy Twitter, but Elijah Moore at the 906, especially with the start that Team 6 had and how they're kind of drafting right now. Hello. That's all I'll say. Is that's a nice little value pick, and those receivers are looking good. Elijah Moore, 807 normally in FFPC main event dress, goes a whole round later. I know you're for that, but I want to talk to DeAndre Swift goes at the 707. We talked about at the very start of the show, kind of the uncertainty about the Eagles running back position. He falls to the 810 today. I know you kind of already touched on it early on, how you feel about how this is going to shape up. But the DeAndre Swift at the 810, is that too far? Or is that, you said, you're buying kind of, there's a little bit of uncertainty, but you kind of focus more on Rashad Penny. Is Team 3 over here looking like, oh, they're sitting pretty with that DeAndre Swift? I know not even kind of looking at the bill, but just that specific value. Are you all in on that? Or you think, honestly, that might be about right?
Outstanding. I mean,
okay.
With that team set up the way it is, you obviously have Jalen Hurts. You didn't get a chance to stack him with anybody. I know stacking is a little different in a managed league. Obviously you're trying to win $1 million, but you got to get there first. But you have the Hurts Swift, hook up. Swift's going to catch a lot of passes. I mean, he's all positive and press wise. From the beat writers in Philly saying he's going to be, he's going to give him another level out of the backfield they haven't had in a while. Obviously, Miles Sanders was terrible out of the backfield catching the ball. He offers another dimension that this offense, will only make it better. 8-10 is just ridiculous value for Swift. I still betting on him if I have to bet on anybody out of this backfield. You're still you're adding JSN, and now you're starting running backs or Pearson, Swift. Is that something you're going to lose a little bit of sleep over? Of course it is, because there's massive questions with those two guys. But this team, who we were talking about, worried about tight end and worried about running back, for the time being, they're going to be drafting a ton of running backs, and this team is definitely one to watch out of this league, because Njoku round after, I'm not the biggest, this is kind of a dead zone tight end with Freiermuth, Njoku, and Evan Ingram, to me at least. If I'm waiting on tight end, I'm going down in the darkness, with some of these guys we've talked about a bunch. But Njoku's not a bad 9th round pick in this format, in a managed league. He has plenty of potential in that offense. If, everybody thinks Watson's going to take that next step. So Team 3, good job so far.
What's really fun, and we'll be doing a main event coverage every Sunday night leading up to the start of the NFL season. It's always going to be 7 p.m. or 10 p.m. It's always going to be Sunday night. It's just kind of be flex scheduling almost, depending on me in terms of availability. But what's really fun is the preseason, you're really seeing impact ADP. One of them, which we didn't discuss at the start of the show when discussing which preseason storylines and stats we're buying, is Khalil Herbert got pretty much, I believe, all of the touches on that opening couple of drives. I know he had a big touchdown run. Can't buy too much into that based on kind of the product of the touchdown itself. But first 7 snaps, he was on the field for all of them and contributed on a big touchdown. Roschon Johnson looked good. Foreman, not as much. Khalil Herbert goes at the 912 usually, all the way up to the 901. So, guy, we haven't really talked about that Bears offense. We talked about DJ Moore. We talked about Justin Fields. Is Khalil Herbert now the running back to own in Chicago? It still seems like it's going to be a little bit of a clusterfuck in that backfield, to be completely
definitely
frank.
The running back to own early in the season. I mean, he's a guy that I feel like they're going to count on early in the season. Does that mean he keeps the job when Roschon Johnson gets his legs under him and really, takes it to the next level? I think no. I think Roschon Johnson will take the job eventually. That could take a while. Obviously, the rookie curve is massive. But with running backs, you see a little bit more flash here and there. Obviously, you've seen it in the past. But Khalil Herbert's definitely a guy like we talk about shorter's regular season. In the 9th round, maybe not with this team structure, but like let's just hypothetically say that Khalil Herbert was with team 3. Seems like it makes a ton of sense because you're going to get a lot of Herbert early in the season, until you figure out your running back position. On a structure like that, Khalil Herbert might not be a guy that wins you a league, but will get you a couple wins early in the season because he's going to be the guy they're going to trust early in the season. I'm not a Foreman guy. I don't think Foreman, he's not a guy I would say I'm totally ignoring, but I can see the chances of him getting cut better than the chances of him being, the Bears' leading running back.
And I do really stand by it. It's just that backfield seems, and their ADPs kind of reflect it. It seems kind of like a muddled mess that no one can really decipher with 3 possible names emerging kind of any given week. Because I could see, as you said, Foreman could have just some weeks where he's leading it, and that's tough in a weekly managed format to decide.
You said it perfectly. Herbert, obviously that touchdown he scored was a little fluky, but started with the starters, played with the starters, all that good stuff. Still didn't move anywhere. I mean, he's pretty much the same place.
901 to 912. He's getting
moved up. I guess you could say around. But like usually when you see jumps like that, you see guys move up 2 rounds.
Sure,
he get up and sniff the 7th round maybe a little bit, especially at the running back position where there's so many questions right now. Isaiah Pacheco or Khalil Herbert. Is there really that much difference? 2 rounds of ADP? I don't think so. Not right now, at least.
Well, Terp, let's talk about a guy who's jumping up 2 rounds. Kenneth Gainwell usually goes at the 12:09, 10:08 today. Is that fair? After kind of sitting out with the rest of the starter, some reports he might be the lead back.
It's definitely fair. I mean, you have to. These beat writers get paid to, obviously tell you the truth. Do they always tell you the truth? Is there a lot of stuff that you have to read through and see? But when everybody's saying the same thing, it's definitely something to worry about. I mean, you're going to see week 2 of the preseason, you're going to see a lot more clarity on this situation. Because if Gainwell comes out, starts with the ones, if Hurts plays, or if he doesn't, and then you see, a rotation behind with Swift or Boston Scott or Penny or Sermon or whoever's in the backfield, then maybe, hey, you should be worried about, Gainwell more than you are now. But I could also see a world where DeAndre Swift does not play week 2. Gainwell plays, he leads off, and then you just don't know anything. So I'm betting on talent. I'm still betting on Swift. That does not mean I'm ignoring Gainwell. It was for a while. It was Swift, Penny, Gainwell for me. It's switched. It's still Swift, but now it's Gainwell, Penny, in the order of guys that I'd be targeting out of that backfield. It's a fluid situation. Next week could be Penny. We don't know. But I'm betting on talent. I'm betting on Swift. But Gainwell, you're looking for handcuffs or guys who could be, league winner types. I have no issues taking Kenneth Gainwell.
Guys kind of surprisingly dropped around in ADP, 907 usually, 1007 tonight. Pete Carroll, I just want to say, is the worst. Great coach, but I mean, first with the Zach Charbonnet pick, first of all, but then saying that Zach Charbonnet is out indefinitely, and then he comes back a week later and he bowling people over in his preseason debut. It looked great. Surprised? Are you surprised? I am that he falls almost around into the 10th.
Very surprised. I mean, he looked strong in the preseason. Definitely a guy that I've been targeting. Definitely more Charbonnet than Kenneth Walker for me. I don't see that changing. I mean, there's still, a month left. And obviously by the time I get to main events and bigger drafts at the end of the month, it could switch up a little bit. But Kenneth Walker, where did he go here?
At the
4th round. It's a little rich for my blood. I mean, with the uncertainty with Pete Carroll, we always say if a coach and in a front office love a player, why would they add 2 other guys in the draft? That's to me a massive red flag. And I know Kenneth Walker had a really, really good regular season last year. Had plenty of fantasy performances that fantasy owners were really excited about going into this year. But clearly his coach was not excited, and clearly the front office was not excited because they added one of the best running backs in the draft and also added a late pick on a running back when Normally you'd be like, no, we're not doing that. But Seattle's just a wild card. They're not much different than the Patriots when it comes to the running back position. It's definitely a worry. I'll take the cheaper guy. I think Charbonnet is a little bit more talented than Walker overall.
I think both of them are very talented just based on college shape. And Kenneth Walker was great last year. I think there is at least some positive reports. It almost would have been for us fantasy owners, not for Kenneth Walker and the Seahawks, if Walker's injury lingered longer and as we get closer and closer to week 1 and Charbonnet would get moved up. Some more uncertainty with Walker returning to practice and seemingly injury. He's on the mend. So it just kind of throws that backfield into flux. Who knows what we'll see. That's going to be one that's down to the wire. It's obviously Walker is going to be drafted ahead of Charbonnet pretty substantially, but nothing will surprise you out of that backfield. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation to monitor. But yeah, Charbonnet looked really good. Shoulder looked like most importantly, it looked like no issues there at all.
None at all. He wasn't scared of any contact. Nothing to worry about, for him so far.
So I wanted to bring up Jahmyr White. Usually goes at the 12:09. He goes at the 11:03 today. But you kind of look at it with Team 3. I don't mind it. Hear me out, just because we have to assume Josh Jacobson's back, just because all of them. Saquon came back. Jonathan Taylor looks like he's coming back. It's just we know it doesn't work. But in the off chance that Josh Jacobs is holding out, and you're kind of went so receiver heavy here, Jahmyr White is just kind of this super lottery ticket pick in the 11th round. It doesn't work out, you can just drop him. I don't know how talented Jahmyr White is. I wouldn't shock me if they look at a free agent back. If Josh Jacobs is holding out, they just signed Damian Williams. Nothing. But basically my question is, in regards to the build, are you okay? And is basically Jahmyr White in your mind worth a lottery ticket, or are you just kind of confident that Josh Jacobs comes back?
100% worth a lottery ticket. He's a guy that I've been targeting a lot in the last month with the uncertainty with Josh Jacobs. I really think I like his talent coming out of Georgia. He had some injury histories over his years. Obviously, his rookie season was kind of a wash, but scored today in the preseason. Definitely a guy that has potential, and he's a perfect guy you're targeting. This late, you're targeting high upside backups that you're pretty sure that if something happens to Josh Jacobs, holdout or not, he would be the guy. Obviously, they brought in Damian Williams. I'm pretty sure that's who they brought in.
Yep.
Not somebody I'm worried about in any way. A veteran guy who should just be a stable factor. Just to settle that room down a little bit. But Jahmyr White has a ton of talent in an offense and a team that's not really going anywhere. I really could see him being a 11th, 12th, staple pick for me. As we get to closer to the summer end.
Can we go real quick? I wanted to ask a while ago back to the 6th round. I just wanted to get your thoughts. Joe Burrow goes at the 6:01, a little later than ADP. Nothing really changed. Zach Taylor just repeated the timeline is the timeline.
I think if anything, it's got better.
Okay. I just wanted to see your thoughts on the latest update on Joe Burrow.
I saw him out there running. I mean, he doesn't look like he's somebody that's going to miss any time. And, I'm a guy who loves stacking and all that stuff, but you're going to start tickling me a little bit with the late 6th round Joe Burrow. We talk about the elite quarterbacks this year, and it seems like it's the year of the elite quarterbacks to get one of the Mahomes, the Hurts, the Allens, the Jacksons, the Herberts, Lawrence, Fields, Burrow, and then the drop-off comes to Deshaun Watson, and then the drop-off even gets bigger to everybody else. So Joe Burrow is the last one there, with Chase, with Higgins, with Mixon, with Boyd, with Irv Smith, in an offense that we know is going to throw the ball a ton in a division that needs to, score to win. Him falling there is great value. That discount's closing soon.
Nate Garcia in the chat saying, what are the best fantasy football online paid leagues to join in the $500 range? Sir, let me direct you to the Fantasy Pros Championship on myffpc.com. $350 to enter, 3 teams for $1,000. A little discount for you. $1 million grand prize, over $6 million in the prize pool. That is what I would recommend for you, sir. Great contest. Thousands have already signed up. Drafts are filling every day, and it's only going to fill more as we get closer and closer to week 1. But we are covering tonight the FFPC Main Event, also $1 million grand prize, $5.91 million in the prize pool. As I said, $2,000 entry. Me and Turp will be covering the main event drafts every Sunday night. If you're looking for Fantasy Pros coverage, that's every Tuesday night. And this Tuesday upcoming, we got a Fantasy Pros live draft coverage followed by, for the first time,
we got a doubleheader.
a super flex best ball tournament draft. We wanted to get a little super flex action on here. And then if you're into Dynasty, August 23rd, Wednesday, we'll be having a live Dynasty draft. Sign up for that. Entries are available. Spots are limited, but available on myffpc.com. If you go to our Dynasty Leagues, $100 live, and it's labeled live on FFPC YouTube. So we got a lot cooking over the next couple of weeks. Draftathon is fast approaching. Me and Terp have big plans for Draftathon. We haven't finalized them, but there's going to be a lot of drafts that weekend. And then before we know, we're going to be live in Vegas covering some of those live draft boards. So a lot cooking from us with our live draft coverage. Obviously, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour every Friday, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the Better Sports Network High Stakes Fantasy Football Show. So everything that you need fantasy football, high stakes related, is here on the FFPC YouTube. Terp, I want to direct your attention kind of back to the draft. Marvin Mims goes at the 12:04. I know we've kind of discussed him. Jerry Jeudy looked great in the preseason. You kind of mentioned, you said some dangerous words pre-show that you think Russ may be back. Obviously, Tim Patrick unfortunately injured. Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims. Obviously, Courtland Sutton disappointed us all last year. Basically, my question is, I think I know your answer, but between Marvin Mims or possibility of maybe a post-type sleeper Courtland Sutton, who are you in on?
A little bit worried. First preseason game, I know Marvin Mims has been a little banged up, but he didn't play any snaps. And that's definitely something that I don't know what the case was. Maybe he had like a little, lingering injury as they didn't want to put him out there, but has me a little worried. Mancher's still Marvin Mims. I mean, I think you're getting a lot of positive Courtland Sutton press so far in camp. He seems to be gelling with Russ. Every other day, it's a Russ to Sutton, Sutton to Russ. Judy's definitely the guy to own out of all of them, but it could be a flip of last year looking at the overall picture. Like you try to I'm a person that when the year's over, I forget about last year. I try to black it out of my mind, good, bad, or indifferent, because you don't want to form biases of the year before, because we all know how bad Denver was last year. We all know how bad Courtland Sutton was last year. We all know how good Jerry Jeudy was at the end of the season. So you look at all those factors, every single person's going to go, well, Judy's the guy this year. Rightfully so, he should be. To me, he's the best receiver. But are people off on Courtland Sutton too much because of just the disaster of last year? For somebody who was highly invested in him last year, Courtland Sutton's a guy I've been adding more of. I still think, to answer your question, though, it's still Marvin Mims. Love this talent coming out of school. They traded up to get him. He was Sean Payton's first draft pick. He's a guy that, has a ton of potential. No Tim Patrick, no KJ Hamler. I mean, the potential in that offense is Russ is back. I'm
Dangerous.
still on board with that. I'm not going to sit here and advocate Russell Wilson as your starting quarterback in your FFPC main event, but you could do a lot worse.
Terp, I wanted to direct your attention because people are talking in the chat about Team 5, and they want to ask you first. I'll ask you kind of more broad, is what are your overall thoughts about kind of punting on quarterback and waiting to take one? And then they ended up taking Geno. They stack it with DK. So what are your thoughts on the Geno pick? But then what are your thoughts kind of in large about waiting on quarterbacks in the FFPC main event? And Bill Hollywood's in here also asking, would you rather have had Stafford or Goff or Geno?
Never Stafford. I mean, it's Geno's a guy that I feel like is getting ignored in fantasy drafts this year. Where can you say is his downside? They paid him. They got better receivers, with obviously adding JSN. Running back room got better, gives them more options there. Who cares about tight ends? They don't believe in Noah Fant, whatever. But if you're going to wait on a quarterback, to me, Geno is one of the perfect guys. They're going to be in an offense that's going to throw the ball. DK, Lockett, JSN, Kenneth Walker, maybe, Charbonnet. He is, if I'm going to wait, it's Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, or if I'm just going to, get crazy, I'm going to bet on the upside of Anthony Richardson. I mean, I don't know if I could do that in an
rough
FFPC
preseason
main
debut.
event. I don't really get preseason. I expect to be rough, just like CJ Stroud. But I feel like these guys, as the preseason comes along, are going to improve. But with Anthony Richardson, he is going to give you a 25, 30-point game, but it's probably going to be on your bench because you're never – in best ball, it's different. Like, people always say, like, you do different leagues and it's different strategies. Anthony Richardson, love his talent. Extremely, favorable situation. But there's going to be games where he's like 9 of 12, for 150 yards, and you're banking on rushing ability. And if the rushing ability doesn't come, you're going to lose that week because the quarterback's going to get smoked. So you got to have a solid – if you're going Anthony Richardson as your starting quarterback in the FFPC main event, you better be taking a Daniel Jones, a Geno Smith, and Aaron Rodgers, a Kirk Cousins behind him. Because if not, you could be going gray really quick.
Terp, I think last episode we talked about Luke Musgrave, and I was saying I'm waiting for that bump to happen.
It's coming.
And he went at like the 17th round. Then it's moved up to the 16th round. Tonight, 13th round, 1309. Is that too rich for you? Or are you kind of like, hey, you didn't
what's there to be worried about? Like, I'm looking at Luke Musgrave, perfect example right here. Luke Musgrave versus Irv Smith. What makes me 100% confident that Irv Smith is going to be Hayden Hurst of last year? Irv Smith has never shown that. He's always been hurt. And when he's been out there, he hasn't been very good. I'll take a gamble on Luke Musgrave, who I'm pretty sure, almost guaranteed, is going to play almost all the snaps from day one. Will there be growing pains? Of course. But there's not a single tight end on that roster that should give him any worry early on. His pass catching ability, we saw Jordan Love miss him on a wide open pass that probably would have scored or at least made a big chunk of yards in the preseason against Cincinnati. The talent's there. Obviously, the tight end positions are hard to figure out, as a rookie. But I think he'll settle right around this range. And if you're starting off on, a big-time tight end like Andrews or Kelsey or Hawkinson, he is the perfect upside number 2 option, on a team. He's a guy that could be a league winner down the road because he just has so much snap equity, and he's going to get plenty of targets in that offense.
Jake Vanetti in the chat. Musgrave had 30% of Love's targets in the preseason game. Bill Hollywood also talking about Jordan Love, that Love's going to have to check it down a lot. He thinks to Jones. He's starting
Bill Hollywood, Jordan Love does not suck. They wanted to get him some confidence in preseason game 1. They didn't take any big shots. They wanted to get him some completions, get him going. The guy has started very minimal games in the league. Give him some time. And if you're drafting any main events and you don't like Packers, ask me and I'll make sure I get in your leagues because I want all the Packers. You don't have to take them.
I don't. Yeah, I think I lean more with Bill Hill. I don't know if he sucks.
I'm not sitting here and saying Jordan Love's a starting quarterback in the FFPC main event, but as a backup with potential, I'll take my shots.
I think it's more impactful is how he's going to impact those receivers, right? And the tight ends. I don't know how great that offense can be and how many of these Packers weapons can return their value based on where they're getting drafted if Jordan Love does indeed kind of stink. That's, I think, the tough situation. Less so about Jordan Love's fantasy value.
If you really think about it, like if you're not a Christian Watson guy, or you're not an Aaron Jones guy, even if you are, they're only 4th round picks. Christian Watson in the 5th round. So you're not really investing that high dollar.
Only is a little bit of a stretch there. My 4th round pick in the main event, I need to be delivering. So that's a good question, though. Where's your cutoff on where you feel comfortable and kind of, I'm willing to take a risk if that guy doesn't pan out? It's just a blank pick, right? What round is that for you? Because it can't be the 4th round. We're like, it's only a 4th. Is it like the 7th, 8th, where you're like, where does that start for you in a main event?
Probably the 8th, I guess you could say, is a good number. I mean, probably the 8th, I guess, if I had a pick. I mean, never really been asked that question before.
It's a good question because there is a round where you kind of feel as though you're comfortable not getting a 0, but completely losing all the value from that round. We're like, yeah, it was worth the risk. I don't think you can. My point was, I don't think you can say it's only a 4th round pick. Watson, I think there's one of the guys you would assume if Love stinks, you're also expecting them to be throwing the ball around, and Watson, I think, will deliver his fate because he should get peppered with targets. And Eric Balkman's obviously been on many of our shows discussing how Jones can return value. But I do agree the Love and how he impacts some of those other guys is concerning. I wanted to talk to you about a guy who fell almost 2 rounds. Greg Dulcich came on late last year in the games when he was healthy, was great, but not good preseason usage. Who knows kind of what the deal is there? Do we have another Albert O on our hands?
Yeah. First of all, before I talk about that, we have a FFPC main event owner that has drafted 2 defenses. back to the tight end. Depth chart, first, depth charts always get people crazy. Bijan Robinson's a third string running back. We can go down the list of all the running backs who are starting for the Eagles that we talked about are all number ones. Ignore these. They mean nothing. People are worried about Greg Dulcich. And, you had the worry of last year, Alberto, different coaching staff. Sean Payton knows what he has in this player. But they went out and they got Adam Troutman, who's not a great player in any, but he's familiar with Sean Payton and his system. So you have to look at, if he's only going to play on passing downs, it's a big red flag. And so far through preseason games, he has, that's what they've shown. But I'm still betting on the talent. If he's fallen 2 rounds, I'm taking him. I have no issues with the player. The player is extreme. I mean, I think he's one of the highest upside tight ends this year. He's a guy that could get up in the top 5 in the right situation, in that offense. We always talk about tight ends who could be the top 2 pass catcher on the team. There's easily a world where you could see Greg Dulcich as the second receiver behind Judy or Sutton. I could easily see that. You could tell yourself that story. Does not sound crazy. There's a lot of these other players that you try to tell a story that's like, nah, don't really, is Jake Ferguson going to be the number 2, receiving option in Dallas behind CeeDee Lamb, Gallup, Cooks? Tough to tell yourself that story. With him, you could definitely tell yourself that story that makes, sense. But the depth chart always gets people worried. That's why it's a good time to draft, because some of these, people just get a little off the wall and they drop rounds that they shouldn't do. And these owners are picking up good value.
Kareem Hunt, he was going to sign with the Saints, and then now he's going to he's visiting the Colts. Seems a little bit up in the air. Would you rather him be a New Orleans Saint or Indianapolis Colts? Real quick, my perspective. Saints sniff of he gets kind of cut maybe once after Kamara gets back, kind of fill in. But Colts, I think, personally present maybe a little more opportunity depending on the Taylor situation. What are your thoughts on
back to the Saints, though? The Saints make sense now because Kendre Miller got hurt, sprained knee today.
Already been banged up earlier in preseason, so he's already had 2
tests already to see if it's like something more severe. Definitely a worry there. I mean, everybody likes him and likes the talent, but the health, obviously a question early in camp. Was nicked up last year at TCU, and then came into camp, looked good for a little bit, and now he's banged up again. So Kareem Hunt, I don't care where he goes personally because I won't have much of him. I would prefer he goes to the Saints because that just muddies it up even more. It makes those guys like that backfield just in a void for me. If he goes to the Colts, is he going to split time with Jonathan Taylor? That doesn't make any sense. I don't know.
I also forgot to mention that Chad is helping me out. Also visited the Vikings, I believe, a day ago. So also factor in the Vikings.
Which is another thing that doesn't make any sense to me because I guess it makes sense because I'm not a Madison guy. So with Madison, if you don't believe in Madison, Kareem Hunt just makes a ton of sense. But Ty Chandler actually looked really good in the preseason. I mean, was very active. You saw some speed from him. So it doesn't make any sense why Hunt would go there. It could be the best fit for him. Like we talked about how Dalvin Cook should have went back to Minnesota. That's the best fit for him. So Hunt could be looking at it that way. But if Hunt goes there, that's a disaster blow for Chandler, McBride, and obviously Madison.
I mean, we talked about the Vikings don't give their running backs a ton of touches, which is the whole kind of knock on Madison, and it's kind of suppressing his value from skyrocketing even more than it kind of did after the Dalvin Cook release. I think none of them are great options. I mean, Kareem Hunt, he's kind of fallen off, but I mean, we're just intrigued because there seems like there at least some teams are kind of percolating as options for him. We're flying through this draft up about just over an hour in. We're already on to round 16 here.
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, and really good drafts too. A Bill Hollywood comment. Juwan Johnson is the hardest person, I believe. That's what he said. Let me go confirm. Let me get his exact words. The toughest player for me to rank is Juwan Johnson. Really good preseason. I believe Terp. Don't want to put words in your mouth there. You're high on Juwan Johnson. He goes tonight at the 12-10. Give me your thoughts on Juwan Johnson.
I think my tight end ownership as of right now, without looking at it, he's in my top 3. Talented player, a guy I like. They muddied the situation a little bit, adding to the room. Foster Moreau still has, worries there. Obviously, he has he's familiar with Carr. That's something that worries you a little bit, but I like the talent. I liked him last year. He's a guy that, I picked up, later in drafts. He's a guy that was real quiet. Nobody knew about him. And then came steamed up early in the preseason. And a guy that helped fantasy teams last year. He's definitely a guy that if you punted tight end, he didn't hurt you in most spots. So he's a guy that I feel fits perfectly in that offense. I saw Michael Thomas caught a ball today, but I really like that. I really like Carr in that offense. I know he's not a superstar or anything, but that division is the worst, maybe in the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, that division is bad.
I mean, consistently when you're looking at what's the worst division of football, the NFC South pops up way more than it should. It pretty consistently.
And the Saints, I wouldn't classify as a good team. They're clearly the best team. If they don't win that division, their whole coaching staff should be looking for jobs because
Dennis Allen stinks though, Tarp. I don't know.
So bad.
I could see I could see 3. I don't see the Bucs winning, but I could literally see Carolina sneaking in 8.
Carolina's going to get poor Bryce Young killed.
Both of them, I like. It feels like a 9-8, 8-9 is going to win that division.
Atlanta, I guess, if Desmond Ridder turns into that guy, it's a story you can tell yourself.
Talk about rough preseason debuts. Bryce Young was
terrible. And
it's never good. I get it. It's never good when you're a starting quarterback and the first question he's answering after a rough debut is like, "How are you feeling?" And he's like, "Yeah, I feel fine." But they're just
not Alabama.
They're so concerned about the size. I almost feel for him a bit. But I just want to go back to you real quick with your Carr love. It goes back to Jawan Johnson. You're positive towards Michael Thomas. I mean, I just can't trust him to stay healthy. It feels like he's shown you so many opportunities that he never does. And maybe this is the year. It's like when people are finally kind of out. But you've seen his ADP steadily rise. But Chris Olave to the moon. I mean, I think there was a stat circulating today. It's if you look at the receivers in the past 5 years that Derek Carr supported, and I think it might have included just receivers because it included Waller one of the years. And it's been consistent. Like he's getting a top 10 receiver or a top 3 tight end most years. And so he always finds that guy, and that assumably is going to be Olave. So from that perspective, that's what I think everyone really is in on the Saints offense. I go back to, I believe it was the Hardway draft, and Billy Muzio presented a bunch of great stats on why he thinks Olave is going to be big. If you're looking for any of our past live draft coverages, there's a folder one of a playlist on the FFPC YouTube with every 2023 live draft coverage we've done. So you can always go check out those and see some of the experts we've had on live to draft. So go check those out because they present even better stats, far better stats than me and Terp do. Terp, I know we talked about Derek Carr, kind of these last couple of rounds, 15, 16, now we're on 17. Any late sleeper picks? I know you've mentioned Jalen Hyatt. Is Jaden Reed? People obviously he got boosted up after some early reports. Is he maybe a late value? I know you're in on the Packers. Let's focus on Jaden Reed because he got really steamed up a little right after the NFL draft, and there was some early buzz about him, rookie OTAs, and then it's been kind of suppressed since then. He's 16th, 17th round. Where are you at on Jaden Reed? Obviously Dobbs has looked good, but Jaden Reed, I mean that initial buzz was there. It's just completely worn off.
I mean, I definitely think the buzz is still there. I mean, he's a talented kid. I mean, they clearly like him. He's going to develop with love. It makes a ton of sense in the 16th round to take a shot on him. If you don't believe in Christian Watson, or you don't believe in Romeo Dobbs, both guys have questions. I mean, I love, obviously Christian Watson, but both guys could easily be very, very average. And then what happens? Jaden Reed's the guy. There's nobody else there. There's no other veterans. There's no other guys you're really worried about. So it just makes a ton of sense. Jaden Reed in the 16th round, Donovan Peoples-Jones we talked about. It just makes plenty of upside. Like we always talk about handcuff running backs and guys who have potential. Both those two players have potential. Michael Gallup's another one. Who else? I'm just trying to figure out. I know we don't like really controversy on the main thing, but is Rob Russell calling us trash or Christian Watson and Jaden Reed trash?
You know what?
Because if I remember correctly, Mr. Rob Russell was hyping up CEH as the number 1 overall pick after that Thursday night game. I remember him saying he's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. So if he's talking about Christian Watson and Jaden Reed, cool. But if he's talking about me and you, I don't know if he should be the one calling people clowns.
Nothing like Terp interacting with the comment section at 11:15 Eastern time at night. Nothing better than it. Terp, back to the draft.
What I'm here for.
That you can't resist with it. I don't want anyone personally though slandered for any Clyde Edwards-Helaire love, as I've been open about the abusive relationship I was in with my constant love for that man and how often he wronged me and how I would have taken him first overall. Terp, we're looking at it. Justin Ross goes at the 1708. Looked good in the preseason, had a touchdown. I know you've been Sky Moore at the 907 is someone that you've been high on. You're buying that. Obviously, Tony, you said you'll let him beat you. But this is the more and more Justin Ross kind of shows. Is that something that you're going to start buying into? I think beyond anything, he's worth the lottery ticket in these last couple of rounds at minimum.
He's definitely worth the lottery ticket, and he's definitely a guy that I've been drafting a little later. It's just a question of like, yeah, he caught a touchdown, but so did Richie James. You know, he's definitely a guy that you're definitely worried about. Like, who is actually going to, you know, emerge there? Is it going to be Sky Moore, who most people think it will be? MBS is going to get plenty of snaps. Will Kadarius Toney be back? You know, Justin Watson's going to be an annoyance there. You know, he's a special teams guy. He's a guy that, you know, probably makes the team. So are they going to really keep all these receivers? Is Richie James or Justin Ross going to get cut? So, yeah, you see in the preseason and everything looks good, but there's still a lot of questions there. So, but like you said, 17th round with Patrick Mahomes continues to have, you know, build on a positive preseason, positive so far. I like Justin Ross. You know, he's a guy that I've been drafting, has upside, was a great player at Clemson before the injury, which is very, very sad because his trajectory he had DeAndre Hopkins written all over him. Mm-hmm. Definitely had potential there.
As a true freshman at Clemson, was just one of the best
receivers. So good. Team. And then I remember hearing about that injury and then kind of just fell off the map and never really made it back until this year. So I wish him all the best. I hope he makes the team. I think he has a ton of potential, but the injury is very severe. So you definitely have your risks there. But anybody you draft at this point, you have risks. I mean, you look at everybody in this draft, like Richie James, another guy got drafted here. Joshua Kelly, like you saw a lot of potential in that Chargers backfield, you know, from an unknown, you know, rookie to Isaiah Spiller, you know, guys like that. Joshua Kelly's just not a guy that I'm really excited about, even with, you know, backup to Eckler. And then Keontae Ingram banged up a little bit in camp, but we talked about how bad the Cardinals are, and the Cardinals might be trying to give these guys a audition to see if they're going to be part of their team for the future. So guys you take a shot on, Keontae Ingram's one of them.
Terp, really good question here in the chat. And I think the answer truly, just from what my knowledge is, it really is, it's all dependent. But if you did 5 entries in the main event, how many teams would you expect to make the championship round? Is it 20%, 30%? Kind of, if you, let's say 5, right? Well, out of those 5, is it 1? I'm sure it's all dependent, but if you're kind of doing that consistently year over year, what would you kind of guesstimate is of those 5, how many make it into the championship?
I mean, the arrogant answer is always going to be 5, but that's not really realistic. I mean, obviously it's possible, but I would say 3 to 4, you know, is a good number. I mean, you try to get as many as possible in there to give yourself a chance. I mean, obviously different rosters, different setups. Mm-hmm. I think 3 is probably the right number.
I mean, the real answer is probably 1 to 2. Like if you're actually looking at it with everything that could go wrong, I would say it's probably 1 to 2 if you're doing 5, make it to the championship.
Because I mean, you look at so many teams that you have, and there's so many the ebbs and flows of the year. You have teams that start off 4-0. I had a team last year in the main event that was 5-0 that I thought was the greatest team ever created, and then at the end of the day, didn't make the playoffs. Just totally fell apart at the end of the season. You know, there's just so many things that went wrong, so many things I did wrong. But looking back, you learn from that stuff and you try to improve on it year after year. Because you get a 5-0 start in a main event, you should make the playoffs most of the time. So to me, the answer is 3. I think it's a safe number. But
your confidence is off the charts right now.
Confidence never lacks. Doesn't always work out, but it's not
the real answer, I think, is if you trust yourself in fantasy, which a lot of people do, and you're playing the main event, and I'm confident that if you're playing the main event, you know what you're doing. There's just so much out of your control with fantasy football. You could have the greatest draft injuries. I think doing 5, 1, 2, and there's going to be over the course of time. I think you have to look at it because any year, hard for year, but if you extrapolate it over a 5-year stretch of drafting 5 teams per year, doing 25, you probably get about like 6 or 7. at minimum. I don't know. I don't want to say too much because like I don't know.
Because I know a ton of guys that do a ton of main events, so like their numbers are obviously going to be skewed different than somebody who does 2, 3, 4, 5. Like it's a totally different number. Like best ball, for instance, like I'm probably going to do 20 to 25 entries. By the time, maybe a little bit more by the time it's all said and done. Those numbers are different because you're looking at like what money you're putting in compared to what you're trying to win. Is it top that is that important to you? Obviously, winning 200,000 is the most important, but like you have to look at the math of everything and see like what your break even point is, and then obviously you try to put as many teams as possible in the dance, and after that you just got to see what happens. I mean, there's been some great runs in the last couple of years by the same owner that people didn't think was ever possible. So good for them. They are beasts, but that's hard to do. And they're going to try to do it again this year. And I wouldn't bet against them because those three they're beasts. And they're guys that when you see across from you in a draft room, you really don't get excited.
It's unthinkable almost to win 3 in a row, but that's what Go Bills are trying to do. And the name that they have made for themselves
is crazy. They should retire. I mean, it is to win 3 in a row against the level of talent that they play against every single draft. Like, it's not just like people are like, oh yeah, they have to get to the league. And like we use their team. And I said it 100 times. They drafted Allen Robinson last year. Everybody knows the pain that Allen Robinson brought fantasy football owners, but they figured out a way to manage their way through the regular season, get to the dance, and then the rest is history.
We don't talk about Allen Robinson. Good question, Rubio. I just want to cover how many teams are competing in the main event. 4,200 teams are in the main event, so it's definitely a smaller field, but again, $1 million grand prize. It's a put your money where your mouth is type tournament.
The goal with the main event is always come in the top 2.
Get to the championship rounds.
Guaranteed a shot at $1 million.
I think an interesting point that Go Bills has said on the podcast appearances 2 years ago when they won the main event, it was just a perfect team. Like from we went like the draft, the team they drafted was just perfect. Like it was just one of those drafts where everything went right and everybody hit. Last year was not. They would say it wasn't their best team. They felt like, but it got hot. They sneaked in. It got hot and it delivered. I mean, look at Jerick McKinnon. About to say Tank Dell because he just got drafted. Zay Jones, guys that they picked up on waivers. Zonovan Knight was starting for them in, I believe, week 15, 16, one of those. So it's just it's
short impressive. Window guys that got them a couple weeks, that got them the points that they needed to get W's, to get to where they needed. And then Kelsey and Mahomes, we talk about that 100 times over, was league winners. And Fantasy Mojo put that stat up there. And it seems like everybody's taking that stat to heart this year because if you're drafting Kelsey, 75% of the teams, it's crazy.
Yeah, and then as people are talking in the chat, in your league, if you finish top 2, it guarantees you at least a shot at the $1 million grand prize in those championship weeks.
2 years ago, Alex Keaton just said in the chat they picked up Joe Burrow off waivers when he started off slow, and we all know that monster game him and Chase had at the end of the season. I mean, you see stuff like that, like. Every league's different. You should always like waiver wire and stuff like that. Like it's different in every league. You got to pay attention to all that stuff and take advantage of the opportunities to put out there because one little mistake could cost you a top 2 seed, could cost you a playoff berth. We've seen guys over the years lose playoff berths by 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, where they could have been deep runs in the main event and chances at big money if they just tweak something here and there.
Yeah, and some more good points for those who know the Go Bills, especially that first year. Last year, it wasn't even a ton of entries that they did. You slowly build up. They were able to do it. And the cool thing from last year, the team that won last year, drafted live in Vegas. It was a live draft board, in-person draft.
12th slot, too. People always complain about the end of the drafts and how they suck and they don't want to draft there and all that yippity-yap. It worked out for them.
They're like the poster child for the main event. It's crazy how they did. I mean, and then what's crazy if we're talking about the Fantasy Pro Championship, that Embiid did that back to back, and that's way more entries than even the main event.
That's insane.
It's
I remember that happening. I was watching that, grinding that live. He came from nowhere. It was Diggs and Allen on the Monday night against the Patriots. Just remembering like him talking before, like, yeah, I don't really have a chance. I want to get up there in the top 5, maybe top 10. But never really thought he could get all the way there. And then he didn't just get there. He just ran away with it.
That has to be one of the best parts about playing high stakes fantasy football, and why I would recommend it to everyone is obviously your home leagues and small stakes. You have memorable moments, but some of those late week 17, prior to the expansion of the NFL season, week 16, some of those games are just so memorable because it's genuinely millions are on the line.
Alvin Kamara, when he had them Christmas Day, just monster.
Mm-hmm.
That separates you from a field. And in a main event where you're battling against, I don't know, 1,000 teams at the end, whatever the number is, to get that separation with one player gives you so much margin for error that every other team now is done. They pretty much are wiped out because, you see it every year. Jahmyr Chase, 2 years ago. We can keep going on the list of like over the years of guys who just had monster, 1 week games that just separates you from the field. And then you really got to sit down and plug the lineups.
Yeah. And another fun part about playing fantasy football is reminiscing about names from the past. Terp 20, the 20th round, old friend Tyrion Davis-Price goes. You were super high on him last year. There's nothing like seeing guys that you were high on and willing to push up super high, and then they're essentially going undrafted the following.
Chris Evans was another guy like last year, just never materialized and thought he had potential in that offense. Still don't think he's dusty, but he's getting close. But TDP having a good camp, but Elijah Mitchell being hurt, Jordan Mason getting drafted. You got 4 running backs drafted from the San Francisco 49ers. You got to take shots, and he's a shot, I guess. I mean, he's probably going to be a guy you cut, but
no, we're not hyping up TDP. Away from... You know who we can hype up? Deuce Vaughn. At some point, is Deuce Vaughn past being a fun story? And probably, I would say I'm drafting him over Malik Davis. The Cowboys might have something there just as a change of pace back, right? Pollard, I wouldn't say came out of nowhere. Obviously, the Cowboys use more draft capital. But a guy that has a change of pace, I could see Deuce Vaughn getting some legitimate touches. And it's kind of it's a 19th round. You might as well. He looks really good. And in some ways, his small frame, I know it could lead to more injuries. But just with my limited knowledge of never played, but I'm assuming he's way tougher to tackle that low to the ground.
He looks quick. He looks agile. He's just really small, man. I mean, talented football player. Loved him in college. But if they don't add anybody, he's definitely somebody you just have to watch. Like, does he make the team? Jerry Jones likes just being an arrogant prick. I could easily see him making the team and then, give him Pollard carries, as his backup just to make a statement that this guy's going to be a good NFL player. I mean, it's worth a risk. It's worth a chance. I mean, in these drafts, you can always, hey, Deuce Vaughn doesn't make the team. You cut him and pick up somebody else. There's going to be plenty of guys on waivers really quickly in these because a lot of these guys who are getting drafted in these early main events might not make the team. Or if they do, they're pretty much not going to have a role. So you take your shots and you see what happens.
Draft is done. I'd like to thank everyone. Chat section, you guys were phenomenal tonight. Keep those questions coming. Next Sunday night when we'll be back with more main event coverage. But as we said, Tuesday night, we'll be here for both Fantasy Pros coverage. I believe that's at 7 p.m., followed by a 10 p.m. Superflex best ball tournament coverage. So a big Tuesday night coming to you guys. We'll be back. And then, as we said, next Sunday night, either at 7 or 10, it will be posted on all our social media channels when that is. Again, comment section. Thank you. It's going to do it for myself, Dave Tripoli. We'll see you guys Tuesday night.
See you guys.